Let's talk about blood pressure today and hypertension. So specifically high blood pressure and even more specifically high systolic blood pressure. So for those of you who aren't aware, when you're talking about blood pressure, when you have your blood pressure measured, they give you two numbers. They'll say 120 over 80. Well, the 120 number is the systolic number, or the number when the heart is working or squeezing or pumping. The bottom number, the 80, is the diastolic number. That's the pressure when the heart is relaxing. And so, you know, we have pump, relax, pump, relax, pump, relax. And so blood pressure is the pump over the relax. That's how you could look at the numbers. And the systolic number tends to be higher in most people as they go toward a hypertension diagnosis or a high blood pressure diagnosis. And in conventional medicine, the typical treatment for hypertension is one or more blood pressure lowering medications, maybe a diuretic as well to help decrease fluid volume if there's a congestive heart failure type etiology to the hypertension. And so many people out there are on blood pressure medications or hypertension meds, and they're put on the medication and set free and essentially are going to be on those medications for the rest of their life. Well, it's possible to return a high blood pressure to normal if you can find the cause of the high blood pressure. And there's multiple different causes. Common causes could be high stress, insulin surges, zinc deficiencies, and endothelial dysfunction or vascular dysfunction that's part of the constellation of issues that result in cardiovascular disease. And so I want to talk about natural methods to address hypertension today. I've addressed one of them in the past. This study, I made a YouTube video looking at this study that was published in 2019 showing zinc deficiency induces hypertension. And the video is right here on my YouTube channel. It's called Zinc Deficiency and High Blood Pressure, Functional Nugget number 420. So you can search that on my channel or search that on YouTube. And I get artsy on the whiteboard for 8 minutes explaining how zinc deficiency can drive hypertension via its impact on kidney reabsorption of sodium. So check that out if you have hypertension and you think zinc may be part of the cause, or if you can't find a cause, maybe zinc is part of your cause. So there's that study. But today I was reading through different scientific articles and research, and I found a study that was just published in the Journal of the American Heart Association. So that's a pretty big journal if hypertension is your worry, because there's not really a much bigger journal if hypertension or cardiovascular disease is your issue. The American Heart Association is the governing body, so to speak. And this was published in July 2021. So you couldn't get a much newer article than this. And the title is Time Efficient Inspiratory Muscle Strength Training Lowers Blood Pressure and Improves Endothelial Function, Nitric Oxide Availability, and Oxidative Stress in Midlife/Older Adults with Above Normal Blood Pressure. That's a mouthful. But essentially what the study is showing is that training your inspiratory muscles, your inhalation muscles, so your diaphragm and many of the smaller inspiratory muscles in the chest and in the neck, training these muscles just a few minutes each day has been found to significantly lower systolic blood pressure. And it does that by improving endothelial function and nitric oxide synthesis and having the resultant antioxidant effects. So let's break that down. Inspiratory muscle strength training is key, and it's high effort or high intensity, high resistance inspiratory muscle strength training. So if you look at the first paragraph of the study here. It says, aging increases the risk of developing cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death in developed societies. Much of the risk of cardiovascular disease is attributed to increased blood pressure, particularly systolic blood pressure, which is a highly prevalent and clinically important modifiable risk factor. Over 65% of people age 50 and up in the United States have above normal systolic blood pressure, which would be greater than 120 on that top number. And so you go to your doctor's office, you probably have a family history of heart disease, you might be overweight, you might be nutrient deficient, you might be stressed out, so you might have one or more risk factors for hypertension. They take your blood pressure and your systolic number is higher than 120. Say it's 145 over 85. So your doctor's going to say you have high blood pressure. You know, your doctor might say try changing your diet and exercise, but if they don't, they're going to say here's a blood pressure medication to try, such as losartan or something like that. And a common recommendation is aerobic exercise. But as the authors in this study state, adherence to aerobic exercise guidelines is poor, with 40% of people age 50 plus not meeting the guidelines. So 40% or less meeting the guidelines, meaning 60% or more people don't meet the guidelines. And those guidelines aren't that hard to hit. So they're either 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise, so that'd be 30 minutes, 5 days a week, or 75 minutes of vigorous aerobic exercise a week, so 15 minutes, 5 days a week. So neither of those are hard to hit from an absolute time standpoint. Everyone has excuses as to why they can't do that, right? I don't have time, I don't have access to athletic facility, I don't have transportation, I don't have range of motion, I can't afford a care, or I can't afford a gym membership. But, you know, moderate intensity aerobic exercise, everyone can do that. You could figure out a way to do that. But anyways, people don't. Clearly it's an issue. Adherence is an issue. So one big win from this study is A, we found a non-drug way to significantly reduce your systolic blood pressure. And B, we found something that you can do in just 6 minutes a day. Wow, yes, 6 minutes a day. So what they did was they had the subjects in the study, basically they're just breathing. And there's this device that you can pick up, and you're inhaling with that device, and that device is creating resistance to your inhalation. And that resistance builds your diaphragm muscle and your inspiratory muscles, which then results in healthier metabolics of your cardiovascular tree. So the study group, the ones who weren't the control group, they were doing 30 breaths per session, 6 days a week for 6 weeks. So the 30 breaths took about 5 minutes. So that's 5 minutes a day, 6 days a week for 6 weeks. And this was found to decrease systolic blood pressure up to 9 points, which is a significant decrease. Other studies have also found that it helps with obstructive sleep apnea and with stress reduction. And so I researched what's the device that they used in the study, and that device can be found on Amazon here. And it's called the actual device in the study is called the Power Breathe K3. And you can find it here on powerbreathe.com. And this one, you know, is not inexpensive, but this is the one they used in the study to create those great results. If you look on Amazon for similar devices, this is a Power Breathe tool made from the same company that is not the same version of the one I just showed you, but is significantly more affordable at $70 per. And there are what appear to be equivalent versions from other companies for about $50. Like this one is the best seller on Amazon and has 4.5 stars at 4,000 ratings. So you can get into a device for relatively inexpensive, and hey, if it works for you in 6 weeks or less, to the point that you don't have to be on a medication, then that's $50 or $60 well invested. So I wanted to bring this up and show everybody that if you're struggling with high blood pressure or hypertension, then here is a non-medication based, research supported, significant strategy for reducing your systolic blood pressure in just 5 minutes a day. So you don't even need a gym membership for it. And it functions by improving your nitric oxide availability, which is a gas that our body makes to help improve dilation or vascular function. And it also has antioxidant impacts. So let's open it up to questions.
So you many times recommend the 4-2-6 or 4-2-8 breathing.
Mm-hmm.
And if you were to really do it, you really have to expand your diaphragm and then move it up to your chest. And, you know, if you go through the motions and you do it properly, would that be enough to show some sort of shift? Maybe not 9 points, maybe, you know, I'm wondering if it could like lower, because 9 is just fantastic. I mean,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible.
it really is. I would say that if your cause of your high blood pressure is stress cortisol driven, then the 626, 428, whichever, you know, that diaphragmatic breathing is likely to help your blood pressure because you're recruiting or spending more time in the parasympathetic nervous system side of things. It's not functioning or creating the change in the same mechanism as this is. So this is the mechanism of this is strengthening your inspiratory muscles. So strengthening the diaphragm, strengthening chest muscles, strengthening neck muscles, and strengthening the endothelial portion of the vasculature. And by impacting the endothelial function, you're impacting the production of nitric oxide and endothelial nitric oxide synthase, which is the enzyme that makes nitric oxide. And nitric oxide promotes healthy vasodilation and constriction, promotes healthy arterial function, and has anti-inflammatory and antioxidant impacts. So it's a metabolic impact, and you could say a musculoskeletal is not the right term, but a muscular strength impact as well. Whereas the diaphragmatic breathing from a stress perspective is working more from a you know, recruiting the vagus and the autonomic nervous system from the parasympathetic side. That's more a relaxation kind of meditation mechanism versus this one's more a breathing muscle / endothelial mechanism. Did that make any sense?
Yeah.
Or help at all? The short answer is no, they're different mechanisms. So just doing the diaphragmatic breathing wouldn't do it the same way here because you're not adding resistance to the inspiration. So you're just breathing in and counting, whereas this has say a barbell for your mouth, say, that you're trying to breathe through, right? So if we look at those devices, like you're sitting here and breathing into one of these things, and you can, and this one right here is an inhale exhale one, so you could strengthen the inhalation and the exhalation, whereas the power breaths are inhalation breathers. So you're adding resistance to the breath, which makes the muscles work harder, so you're strengthening the muscles to impact the breathing, whereas when you're just doing a 626 method, there's no resistance there. You're working more on kind of diaphragmatic range of motion, rib cage range of motion, and the parasympathetic impact of that. Okay. Awesome question. Similar to if so we want to pair the right, say, strategy with the right cause. So if the cause was stress, then probably the diaphragmatic breathing with the meditation is enough. If the cause is zinc deficiency, then obviously zinc is going to be key. If the cause is insulin surges, then getting insulin sensitivity and diet, blood sugar under control is going to be key. And if oxidative stress and poor nitric oxide physiology is a cause, and if you have an issue with, say, lung function and the musculature diaphragmatic strength, say, then this is going to be a key piece to it. And when you look at their website, they show that it has not just impact on hypertension, but it has impact on well-being, because it does impact sympathetics. It has impact on performance because you're improving lung volume and oxygen delivery, so your muscles can go longer, say, before they go anaerobic. So I'm really interested in this. I'm gonna pick one up myself and play with it and see, do I notice anything in the gym after 4 to 6 weeks using it?
Yeah, because I know that Bryce, he does the Wim Hof breathing, and I listen to Wim Hof, but I can't do it at the speed he does it because it stresses my body out instead of trying to de-stress it.
Mm-hmm.
And he does this where you're taking inhalations and exhalations for like 30 repetitions, and then you hold your breath.
Mm-hmm.
And you hold your breath for like a minute and a half. And boy, it's sometimes a real struggle, but sometimes it's so effortless. You can hold it for a really long time, and so you feel like your lungs are just working at maximum capacity. So
Yeah.
I'd be interested to hear your experience with it and what it feels like.
Yeah, there's different things that can impact your breathing range of motion, for lack of a better term. I remember a few years ago, so I CrossFit, and I've competed in CrossFit for a few years. And a few years ago, when I was first digging into like, how can I improve my breathing to be better in the gym, I started to look at the diaphragm as what it is, which is a muscle. And like any other muscle, you can develop trigger points and scar tissue and adhesions. And hypertonicity. So one day I went in the gym and I took a lacrosse ball and I just went along my rib cage. I put the lacrosse ball down on a plyo box, and I put my rib cage basically on top of the lacrosse ball and was just tracing along my rib cage all the way side to side. And I found a bunch of restrictions. And so what I would do is I'd basically lean into the lacrosse ball and inhale into that point that the lacrosse ball was contacting. So I'd inhale as deep as I could. I held it there as long as I could, like held my breath there on that inhalation as long as I could, and then exhaled as deep as I could and would go in deeper and repeat that 2 to 3 times at each point. And as I went through, right to left, my diaphragm, my whole rib cage, I stood up and I felt like I was breathing for the first time in my life after I did that. Like, because what do? We sit all day, our posture, if you exercise, most of us don't warm up or cool down properly. And I'd never in my life like cooled down by working my diaphragm at all, so there's lots of potential ways that we could win in terms of gaining more or improved breathing and diaphragm range of motion. And so I'm interested in what if we strengthen it, one of these tools, if we get one of these tools and strengthen it, that would be, focusing on strengthening it specifically, not just, can I do more aerobic exercise and get better aerobically? And by doing that, I'm improving, theoretically, you're improving your diaphragm function. Well, what if I specifically pick up one of these tools and specifically strengthen the diaphragm? How does that translate to performance? I'm interested.
I wonder if there's a study on opera singers and singers who exercise and what their blood pressure is like. That would be interesting,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, or yeah, that would be. I was going to say, or what's Michael Phelps is like, someone who can swim like that, but he does so much athletic activity that there's confounding variables there. So the opera singer, if we assume it's an opera singer that's not also doing a bunch of high intensity exercise, that would be cool to investigate. Or a yodeler, or someone who does things like that. Awesome. Well, how about anything else?
So my blood pressure is 120/70. That's fairly decent, right?
Yeah, that would fall into ideal.
Okay. Now, what I've noticed here lately is you took me off of like all high intensity workouts.
Mm-hmm.
So now if I do something that's a little more intense, my breathing is a little more taxed.
Yep.
And going upstairs, I kind of get out of breath. And I'm guessing that that's just that the endurance for the last 6 months, I haven't pushed myself quite as hard. So something like what you're suggesting here may help increase my breathing when I'm doing something that might be a little more intense.
Yes, increase your performance. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for saying that. Let's jump on powerbreathe.com, because one of the things that they use it for is dyspnea, which is medical jargon for shortness of breath. So if we go, who's it for? Here we go. So if we just click on who's it for, we've got sports and fitness, but you've got asthma, blood pressure, COPD, COVID recovery, which is also often fatigue, shortness of breath, brain fog, right? Heart failure, heart disease, neuromuscular disease, because the nervous system needs oxygen, right? We need to be able to deliver oxygen. Stroke, the brain needs oxygen. Pre and post-op, oxygen to heal, oxygen for energy, oxygen's anti-inflammatory. So yeah, here we go, singing and music, Karen. So the potential uses for this are very broad. We all have to breathe, right? So if we breathe better and more efficiently, we should be better at anything and everything we're doing. So to answer your question directly, Michelle, yeah, this would be a way to, if you're not doing high intensity exercise for 6 months, of course, there's going to be some associated deconditioning, right? So I like what you're thinking. If I'm not doing whole body intensity exercise, I can at least, if we had known about this from the start, maybe you do this to maintain the lung conditioning, even though the musculoskeletal may fall off some. Or now, okay, if I'm not ready to add it back, well, let's add this so that we can regain or optimize the diaphragm and lung side of things.
Gotcha.
And again, in just 5 minutes per day.
That's the t-shirt. It's so simple, it's hard.
That's right. Exactly.
That's where that one fits in.
Yeah.